You remember it clearly. The room, the weather, the people who were there, maybe even the exact words someone said. There's only one problem. It never happened. Not the way you remember it anyway. Memory feels like a recording. Something happens, your brain stores it, and later you press play. But that is not what your brain does. It keeps fragments, a face, a feeling, the shape of a room. Then, whenever you remember, it rebuilds the scene from whatever pieces are available. Usually the reconstruction is close enough. Sometimes it forgets why you walked into a room. Sometimes it gives you a memory that belongs to someone else, and sometimes it creates an event that never existed at all. The disturbing part is not that your memory can fail. It is that a false memory can feel exactly like a real one. The doorway effect. You stand up with a perfectly clear intention. You walk into another room, stop, and realize the intention has disappeared. You have brought your body. Your brain has apparently stayed behind. This is often called the doorway effect. In experiments, people sometimes become worse at remembering recently handled information after crossing a spatial boundary, such as a doorway. The effect does not appear in every study or every situation, so the door itself is not deleting your thoughts. The better explanation is that your brain organizes experience into events. While you are sitting at your desk, the current mental file contains the desk, the screen, and the thing you plan to do. Walking into the kitchen signals that one event has ended and another has begun. The old information becomes slightly less accessible because your brain is updating the model of what is happening now. That is why returning to the original room can sometimes bring the thought back. The surroundings act like retrieval cues. Put the brain back into the old scene, and the missing intention may suddenly reappear. You did not lose the thought completely. For a few seconds, you lost the path leading to it. The word that disappears. You know the actor's face. You know the movies he was in. You might even know that his name begins with an M, but the name itself refuses to arrive. This is the tip of the tongue state. The strange certainty that information exists in memory, while access to it is temporarily blocked. Memory is not one solid object. Different parts of a person, place, or word are represented through connected features. Meaning may be available before sound. You can retrieve who someone is, what they look like, and why you know them without retrieving the sequence of sounds that forms their name. Names are especially vulnerable because they carry very little meaning on their own. A baker bakes. Mr. Baker may do anything. The occupation gives your brain several useful routes. The surname often gives it one. Trying harder can make the block feel worse because you keep activating the same wrong candidates. Then, 10 minutes later, while thinking about something completely unrelated, the name appears. Not because the brain finally found the file, because it finally found the correct route. Familiar, but from where? Someone approaches you in a store and their face feels familiar. You assume they were in your class, worked in your building, or met you at a party. Then you realize they deliver the weather on television. The familiarity was real. Your explanation for it was wrong. Recognition can arrive without its source. Your brain may produce the feeling of knowing before it recovers when, where, or how you learned something. Psychologists call mistakes of this kind source monitoring errors. This happens with ideas too. You hear a joke, forget who told it, and months later remember only the joke. When it returns to you, it feels like your own thought. A story told by a relative can slowly become something you believe you witnessed. A photograph can give you details of a childhood day that you no longer remember independently. Your brain usually decides where a memory came from by inspecting its qualities. Does it contain visual detail, emotion, the sound of your own inner voice? But imagined and experienced events can share many of the same features. So, the brain makes its best guess, and it rarely labels that guess as a guess. Déjà vu. You enter a place you have never visited, and for one brief moment, everything feels repeated. The angle of the room, the conversation, even what seems about to happen next. That is déjà vu. Familiarity appearing where your conscious memory says it should not. There is no single explanation that accounts for every episode, but one leading idea is a mismatch between familiarity and recollection. A new scene may resemble the layout of an older scene you cannot consciously retrieve. Your recognition system responds to that hidden similarity while the part of your mind searching for an actual previous visit finds nothing. The result is a contradiction. This feels familiar, but I know it is new. Your brain interprets the conflict as a mysterious repetition of the present. That may also explain why déjà vu often comes with the illusion that you know what will happen next. Once a situation feels remembered, prediction can feel like recollection. In ordinary life, brief déjà vu is common and usually harmless. Frequent or unusually intense episodes can also occur with certain neurological conditions, which is a different situation entirely. For most people, though, déjà vu is not evidence that time has repeated. It is evidence that familiarity and memory can briefly disagree. The brain remembers the meaning. Imagine hearing these words: bed, rest, awake, tired, dream, blanket, nap. A few minutes later, you are asked whether the word sleep was on the list. It was not, but many people remember it anyway. This kind of experiment is used to study spontaneous false memory. The words all point toward the same idea, so your brain extracts the general meaning, the gist, and may later mistake the central idea for something it actually saw. This is normally useful. Remembering the point of a conversation matters more than preserving every exact sentence. Your brain compresses experience because a perfect record of every detail would be slow, noisy, and mostly useless. But compression has a cost. If you remember that a room felt threatening, your brain may later supply details that fit a threatening room. If you remember that someone was angry, a neutral sentence may become harsher each time you retell it. The emotional meaning survives while the original wording drifts. Memory is often accurate about the shape of an experience and unreliable about its edges. It preserves the story. Then it quietly redraws the evidence. Someone else can edit your memory. Two people witness the same event. Later, one of them confidently mentions a detail that was never there: a red jacket, broken glass, a man standing near the door. The other person may begin to remember it too. Information introduced after an event can alter what people later report. This is known as the misinformation effect. It can happen through leading questions, news coverage, photographs, or simply hearing another person's version first. The wording matters. Asking, "How fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other?" carries a different suggestion from asking when they contacted each other. The question does not merely request a memory, it gives the brain new material with which to reconstruct one, and confidence does not reliably protect you. A memory can become more vivid through repetition even as it becomes less accurate. Each retelling makes the route easier to travel. Ease feels like certainty. This is why eyewitnesses should be questioned carefully and independently. It is also why family stories often become strangely synchronized. After enough retellings, everyone remembers the same version. Not necessarily because it happened that way, because that is the version everyone rehearsed. The memory of an event that never happened. Now, the problem becomes more unsettling. People do not only misremember details from real events. Under some experimental conditions, suggestion and imagination can lead people to develop partial or even rich memories of entire autobiographical events that did not happen. The process does not require hypnosis or science fiction technology. It can begin with a trusted source saying, "This happened when you were young." Add a plausible setting. Ask the person to imagine what it might have looked like. Repeat the story over time. Eventually, the imagined scene can gain sensory detail and familiarity. At first, it feels constructed. Later, it simply feels remembered. This does not mean every childhood memory is false or that memory is worthless. False memory studies depend heavily on the method used, and people differ in how susceptible they are. But they demonstrate something important. Vividness is not proof. Emotion is not proof. Confidence is not proof. The brain uses those feelings to judge a memory. Because it has no receipt from the past, it only has the version currently in front of it. When everyone remembers it wrong, sometimes the same incorrect memory appears in thousands of people. A logo has a detail that was never there. A movie line is remembered in a cleaner, more quotable form. The spelling of a name seems obviously wrong in the real world and obviously right in your head. This is commonly called the Mandela Effect. It sounds supernatural because so many people make the same mistake. But people do not remember randomly. We share the same language, cultural references, expectations, and patterns. Similar brains exposed to similar material can produce similar errors. A misquoted line may fit ordinary grammar better than the original. A missing logo detail may be strongly associated with the surrounding objects. An unfamiliar spelling may be pulled toward a more common one. Once the mistaken version spreads online, repetition makes it even more familiar. Then source confusion finishes the job. You no longer remember whether you saw the original image, a parody, a corrected example, or somebody's post about remembering it wrong. A shared false memory does not require a shared alternate reality, it only requires a shared expectation. Every time you remember, you may change it. The strangest part of memory is that remembering is not passive. When a stored memory is reactivated, it can become temporarily open to updating before it is stabilized again. Researchers study this process under the name reconsolidation. The details and limits are still debated, especially when moving from laboratory tasks to complex human memories. But the central lesson is clear: retrieval can be an opportunity for change. So, when you remember a birthday, you may not be recalling the original birthday directly. You may be recalling the last time you remembered it. That version may already include a photograph you saw later, a story your mother told, and a detail your sibling corrected incorrectly. The next retelling can add something else. Over years, a memory becomes less like a preserved photograph and more like a document edited by many invisible hands. This sounds like a flaw, but an updatable memory lets you correct old information, connect new knowledge, and change the meaning of past experiences. A memory system that could never change would also struggle to learn. Your brain is not built to archive the past perfectly. It is built to use the past now. So the next time someone challenges a memory, you can see perfectly in your mind. Remember this: they may be wrong, but certainty does not mean you are right. The scene in your head is not the past, it is your brain's latest reconstruction of the past, assembled from fragments, expectations, emotions, photographs, and every version of the story you have heard since. Most of the time, it is close enough to guide you. Sometimes it forgets a name, sometimes it changes a detail, and sometimes it gives you a complete memory of something that never happened. What is one memory you are completely sure happened, but cannot prove?